Coach Charlie Wildstein here, calling all ballers to get to the Get In Here podcast. This is the first episode. I'm really excited to be doing this, to be able to impact people and really get my thoughts and ideas out there and really work with elite mental performance coaches and elite professionals all over to really impact people. So a little bit about myself. I'm Coach Charlie Wildstein. I got my master's in performance psychology. I'm a mental performance /system /process /leadership coach. I teach athletes and business owners skills to enhance their performance and skills that will impact their everyday life. And I'm really excited to have my first guest here, Juan Garcia, mental performance coach for the Toronto Blue Jays and a great friend of mine. And I'm really excited to kick things off with him. I'll let him kind of go into his journey and a little bit of background about himself and how he's gotten to where he is now. So Juan, I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question, and it's really going to depend how far back you want me to go to dive into, what really kind of brought me along this journey. So, yeah, what are your thoughts? Like, I can keep it simple. I can dive into it.
So I'd love for you to just explain to people how you got into mental performance, what your journey has looked like getting to that point. Go through, your time and the military, and then kind of tell me what kind of skills and tools you learned along that space that you took with you today.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll go ahead and, just keep it short. I went and studied sports psychology. I realized that was a field I wanted to dive into when I met a sports psychologist, Dr. Wade Gilbert. Great guy. He's a professor at Fresno State, where I did my undergrad studies. I essentially wanted to be a high school counselor, just wanting to work in my small community where I grew up in Fireball. But I sat in his office, met him, and I was literally sat there in my head thinking, holy shit, like, what do I need to do to get in your seat? He worked with Olympic athletes, professional athletes, worked with the collegiate athletes at Fresno State. I loved it. Just grew up playing sports my entire life, and that was just seemed like a calling, wanting to mash what I grew up loving in sports, what it gave me, and being able to provide that to young athletes on their journeys and really taking the tools that sports give to those young athletes. I just think it's a vital part of life for young kids to play sports. And so I wanted to be a mentor in that realm, in that field. So yeah, finish my undergrad studies at Fresno State, got a bachelor's degree in psychology. I went to Holy Names University to study sports psychology, got my master's degree in that. And so I ended up, I knew I was going to move away from home at some point to work with the military or try to work in professional sports as a mental performance coach. So I decided to work with a foster agency in our small community in Fresno. So I lived at home after my grad program for 6 months, just to be closer to my family for a bit before I knew I was going to leave. And then ended up applying, working with the military as a mental performance coach, as a resiliency trainer. That was very vital to my growth. I loved the program and curriculum that we dove into. Not only do you learn, right, like the sports psychology, mental performance aspect in school, but really applying it in a professional setting right out of grad school, like that was very integral to my development. So just huge shout out to the work that's being done with the military. It was a very rewarding population to work with. But I knew that wasn't going to last long. Like, I knew I wanted to dive into that phase to really enhance my expertise, to enhance myself as a professional in the field. But I knew someday I would work in professional sports. Didn't know when that was coming. Thank God it did. And now I'm working with the Toronto Blue Jays as a mental performance coach. So it's been a journey. It's been challenging. It's been rewarding all at the same time. So here we are. I would love to hear a little bit about you. I'm sure anyone watching this will love to hear, what got Charlie Wildstein into this field. So that's your.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for passing me the mic there. Yeah, so I grew up playing baseball my whole life. Been around professional athletes my whole life, through my family, um, and I loved playing ball. And once I got to my senior year of high school, I just wanted to be a regular kid and didn't go to pursue college sports. And what I ended up doing is I ended up taking a chance, moving out to University of Arizona, not knowing anyone, starting fresh. And towards the end of my undergrad, I decided that I loved psychology and I loved impacting people. And I had of Arizona that would come to me for advice, that I felt like was crucial, that I could give advice for on how to help them with their mental game and just people in general and life skills. So for me, I decided I wanted to really, pursue this sports psychology. So I moved down to Bradenton, Florida. My grandparents have lived in Sarasota my whole life. And I decided that, I seeked advice from some of the top mental performance practitioners in the field. And one that really stuck with me was advice by Justin Sua. And he basically told me, he was like, you're in that area, you're in their backyard, do anything you can to get in there and learn. So I decided to get a job at IMG Golf Club to be able to afford my master's program. I was fortunate enough to meet Tim Pernetti, who's now the commissioner of the American Conference, and he gave me an opportunity with Taryn Morgan, who is the head of the APD department at IMG Academy. They gave me the first ever IMG mentorship to learn mental performance and leadership. So I sat in throughout the whole summer, learned from a lot of great people over there. One that specifically stands out is Diamond Hall, who's with the Baltimore Orioles. And I learned a lot about leadership skills, a lot about teaching techniques, but a lot about how to apply what I'm learning in person, but also how to find my own style. And then I was fortunate enough to this in 2024 to be a summer mental performance coach at IMG, and they gave me an opportunity. And then once that ended, I decided that I wanted to start something of my own. So I started my own coaching business. So that's kind of how I got to where I am. I just love impacting people. And I know in this space, we'll harp on it a little later too, but you got to create your own opportunities because this is still a pretty fairly new niche, and niche, that people are, getting into, and there's still not a lot of opportunity. So you got to create your own. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. And I just love this stuff. I love impacting people, and I love being able to teach things that I've gone through, but also just being able to impact people with, these aren't just skills to impact your performance. These are everyday life skills that can lead you to a better lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, dude. Agree with what you just said. That last statement, that like this isn't just for athletes. Like talking about the mental game, the mental side really plays a role in your career, in your life. Like even if you're not an athlete, right? And going back, like playing sports, I didn't start playing baseball and football till the 6th grade. I was really late, like really late to sports. I sucked. Like I fell in love with baseball because of how hard it was. I didn't start a game till 2 years in. Like I was an 8th grader in middle school. I had my first at bat. So like 2 long years of practice, like not playing any games, taught me that hard work, self-regulation, right, motivation, confidence, like all that stuff. And one of the big reasons why I said, like, I think sports at a young age is so important for young uh, athletes, young kids, is because you learn those skills through sports. You really get an idea that if you work hard at something, like something's gonna give. There's gonna be a light at the end of the tunnel at some point. And even if there isn't, like giving the fact that I competed for 2 years to learn the game, to get better, like I didn't get the success I wanted, you know. Uh, but that also just gave me the skills of knowing that good things take time, and with that, like, you learn to apply that to your everyday life. So had it not been for that phase of my life where I played sports, regardless of how late that was, like, I wouldn't have had the skills or the tools to get through an undergrad program, let alone a master's degree. Like, school can suck and it can be hard for a lot of people, and it sure was for me. But I knew that if I took more time studying than the person next to me, like, I at some point would come out with what I needed, right? So yeah, dude, I love that aspect of what you mentioned, like how these skills, sports psychology, doesn't just help performers, but it really impacts our everyday life.
Absolutely. And I know, for me, it was I'm going through these things, and as you go through them, you don't really realize the full picture. But as time goes by and you're learning how to be a better practitioner and you're learning how to apply these skills, you start to see these moments that you've lived out through your life that you're like, man, I was living that. So I know how to teach that because I can relate to that. But not only that, I love the piece you talked about. Baseball's a game of failure, right? I mean, the most successful players in Major League Baseball fail the least amount of times, and they still fail, and they're considered successful. So, it teaches us, the game of baseball teaches us so many life skills. And I can totally relate to you in the sense of, without the game of baseball, I don't know if I would be the person I am today, because I learned so much about communication, how you treat others, how much hard work might not guarantee the results that you want to get, but it doesn't mean that all the work you put in was for nothing. It could lead to success in other areas, developmental, growth as a person, you know, growth in your routines and habits. So I'd love to kind of just dive into that with you as someone that's being around professional baseball players. First off, I'd love to know the most important skills you feel like need to be harped on as a mental performance coach with the Blue Jays. And then secondly, just in general, what that process has been like.
Yeah, in our field, we always say it depends. Like, every player has different wants and different needs. So first and foremost, like, I would say the most important aspect of it is, having a good eye to sit back, observe, listen, and just get to know guys and build a rapport with them. Without that, you can't really dive into any of the mental skills. And so if I were to pinpoint, specifically for professional baseball players, like pro baseball players, they are their own worst critics. Like, they have high expectations, they have high standards, and when they're not met, it's a whirlwind, right? So confidence can be an integral part of their development. But I would simply say, just what's between the ears. Like, what are you thinking? And so if guys can develop that awareness of how their thoughts are impacting their emotions, their behaviors, their physiological response, like, I think that's a first and foremost, like, a crucial aspect to developing the mental game for pro athletes and anyone in general, really, like any sport, so we can always be our worst critics.
Absolutely. And that, going into that, and like what you're saying about, baseball, there's a lot of people in baseball, especially at that kind of level, where they want to be a perfectionist, and it's just not possible. But you can be as perfect as you can be. But I wanted to ask you, so do you ever, when you're having these one-on-ones with players within the organization, what kind of guided question, like, because you got to think outside the box to make them have that impact. It's really about, sometimes that gaining that sense of clarity. So how do you get them to gain that sense of clarity? Is it through certain questions that you ask, or sometimes it's just conversation, or is it sometimes just listening to what they have to say and spinning it back to them?
Yeah, you'll often see it out on the field, especially in games, high pressure situations. Like, some guys look sped up. Guys walk out of the batter's box with their head down. Maybe it seems like they're ruminating in their head. Like, those are good, not in the moment to come and have those discussions, but something to follow up on at some other point. Just acknowledging that you observed that behavior and asking them questions regarding, what were you thinking in that moment? What was your expected outcome and what followed, when that didn't come. So yeah, I think really leveraging in-game scenarios and situations like those moments to reflect on at some other point and ask them what was going on in that moment.
Absolutely.
Certainly a way to kind of go about it.
No, that's a great way to go about it, and especially for any young practitioners that are involved in baseball or any other sport, to make sure that you're going through in-game scenarios with them when you're trying to have conversation and see what's going on, I think is absolutely crucial, especially when you're trying to make sure that they understand and are applying the skill the correct way. I think it's important to apply in-game scenarios, but also to be able for them to walk you through that scenario, that what they were feeling and what's their body feel like, and what was their focus on that at bat, that pitch, or when they're in the field, talking about what their game plan is going into it. So I feel like that kind of harps on like authenticity too, and in this space, we want to be very authentic with who we are, but also with the conversations that we're having. Like if I can't relate to the person next to me and they can't relate to me, I'm probably not going to be able to reach them, to be able to help them. So being able to find that middle ground, to be able to have that authenticity, to build that rapport is very crucial. And so Juan, how do you build that with an athlete and the coaches?
Yeah, I was actually about to ask you that same question. I was going to ask you, how do you take time to find relatable kind of components with athletes? Like, what are some of the things you kind of dive into or look for or ask?
First off, I kind of just try to find out who they are as a person, see if we have any relatability there in our values. And then situations, that they think are important in the game, are trying to meet each other halfway on how they think about the game. And maybe just situational things that maybe we agree on, or things that we've gone through that I can find that relatability piece. Or maybe it's just a favorite food or a favorite player, just finding that way to connect them really quick. I feel like that's how you hook someone, and that's how you become an elite mental performance coach off the bat. And not only with coaches, but with athletes, with business owners, or whoever you're working with, or just trying to impact people. I think that's really important, to find that piece. And how you do it is just by conversation and listening, and being able to be like, okay, that's my way in. That's how I'm gonna leverage myself here.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, no, very similar. I'm sure a lot of mental performance coaches leverage that. One thing I often think about is like people in general will have very surface level conversations, and so for me, someone that's just very value driven, I really like to dive into what motivates these guys, and who's important in their circle of support. Like, what are the things they really love doing? What are their siblings' names? What do their siblings do? What do their parents do? And like really get an idea of what some of these athletes I've worked with value. And so in understanding what they value, like you really get an understanding of what motivates them, and so being able to discuss how our values drive our behaviors, like how they drive how we think. I think it's just something that dives a little bit deeper than just those surface level conversations.
Absolutely. And if you're a practitioner, anyone tuning in, that is a great way on how to build rapport with people, how to find that relatability piece, but really just how to get to know who you're around and why they are the way they are too, which I think is extremely important, especially when you're trying to implement things and work with them on how to become a better individual and make an impact every single day. Now, touching on that, the values driven. I'm very value driven in what I teach with all my clients, and just how I am with my everyday. I let it drive me, and it also motivates me.
Yeah.
As I know it does with you too, as I've gotten to know you over the years. How do you align your values with your teaching techniques?
You know, some of my core values is my faith, like first and foremost, my family, hard work, and being of service to others. And so all those encompassing, I really allow them just to bring my authentic self out. And so being true to my faith, like anytime other players want to talk about their faith, like I'm all for it. Want to sit down and do a devotional every single day, like I would love to join in. The family aspect, like I would say the guys that I'm around on a day-to-day basis, everyone's a part of one family, like everyone's a part of one goal, everyone's a part of development. Like it's almost it's just a family of development. I would, almost just like think it through that way. But then just working hard, like making sure I'm at my best every single day for the guys around me, and then being of service to other people, all those allow myself to bring my authentic self, again, to your point, to where it's motivating. Professional baseball seasons are long, they're exhausting, but when I allow those to drive me on a daily basis, like shit's fun. Like I love being around these guys. I love working hard. I love being of service to others. And so, yeah, as long as I let those values drive me, that's what allows my best self to come forth for the guys around me. And that's how I let it kind of just drive me as a practitioner in that field.
That's awesome. One, that's how you apply your values to your techniques, but also just your values in general. I mean, those are some really good ones, and I mean, those are those are important to have to be able to be self motivated, but also just good values to have in general. I mean, I love hearing that. I feel like I can relate to all those. Hard work. I've always had to overcome adversity. So those two have really stuck out to me. I always will put 110% into anything that I do, but also the ability to impact people. That value to me is super important, and I always figure out how I can achieve that, no matter what I'm doing. Even if it's just listening and not speaking a word to who I'm next to. Maybe it's just being, using that active listening. So my next thing is active listening is extremely crucial in our space as a mental performance practitioner. As people are coming into the field, I feel like that is one skill that separates good mental performance coaches from elite ones is being strong in the area of active listening. So what type of advice would you give to people trying to strengthen that skill?
Yeah, that was something when working with the military that was really important in that kind of field. People don't care what you have to say if they don't think you care. You know, Again, kind of going back to like some people just have those surface level conversations, and it's just, hey, how's your day going? Good. All right, let's move on. When you really incorporate active listening skills as a practitioner, when you're just talking to someone in general, like people are going to remember how you made them feel. They might not remember what you said, but they're certainly going to remember how you made them feel. And if you make them feel like you care because your eye contact is there, your facial expressions are there, you don't look like you're wandering or thinking about what to say next, like that aspect of active listening, I think, is crucial. I don't think people realize, some may not, but I may not think people realize how much their body language is saying without saying a word. So that first and foremost, I think if people are aware of what their eyes are saying, what their facial expressions are saying, like what their body language is saying, that's going to give the person you're speaking to or listening to and engaging with really feel like you're there in it with them.
Absolutely. And talking about that active listening piece and making them feel like you care and you have an understanding of what they're trying to say. I think another piece to touch on is don't try to have an answer right away. Just listen, and that is a hard skill to have. It's a hard skill for me with someone that constantly wants to provide and help and help and help. Sometimes, I have to tell myself, just clear your mind, focus on what's right in front of you. And that's just listening to the conversation. And if I can clear my headspace and just listen, it provides me with a totally different perspective. So for me, I mean, what you just said, that piece hits home. And someone that's listening, whether you're an athlete or a business owner or just someone that wants to learn, that's a really important piece. And it's really, really powerful to just be able to show you care and just to listen and not try to have an answer while they're talking. Just be in the moment, be present, and listen. And that's important. And that comes with patience too. And that was the next thing that I wanted to get into is patience. In this field, you hear, be patient, be patient. As an athlete, you hear, be patient. Your opportunity is going to come. Be patient, be patient, be patient. Well, I disagree with that take in our space, being patient, because I feel like you have to create your own opportunities, and you can only be patient for so long. You don't know what other situations are and what they need to do and if they need to provide for their family. I think patience is a key part of the process, but I think you have to be proactive in this space and creating opportunity to be successful. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, dude. That's a great question. Patience certainly is a part of the process, 100%. But I would also agree that people do have to go out and make their own way. And maybe I'm speaking because of, speaking on this because of my upbringing. But yeah, there are players that don't have a lot of time. Like there are guys that are on the chopping block, and could be released at any given moment. You don't have time. And so, yeah, growing up, like I learned patient was important, especially growing up. My dad, he had a really bad truck driving accident, like drove big rigs around the country. Ended up having to need like a 12-hour surgery on his back. Doctors told him he'd never be able to walk again. Thank God he is, and he's fine. Like he's working now. Still has some back pain, but I watched him go through his rehab process. That took 1.5 years, 2 years. He was bedridden for 6 months. Like I watched him patiently recover. At the same time, once he was ready, like he knew there wasn't any time to wait around because my mom was working 2 jobs and he had a family to feed and keep a roof over. There was no time to sit around and mope and, hope for the best. Like he had to get right back to work and figure out a way that was going to allow him to provide for my 2 siblings and my mom. And so, yeah, I learned that you have to go make your own way at the same time, and that's kind of what allowed me to get to where I am today. Like you mentioned it earlier, a lot of people going into our field or that are just getting ready to graduate in our field, it's like there aren't a lot of opportunities and you got to go find something that works for you or you got to make something of it. Right. So yeah, I would agree with that take. Like I don't think there is time to wait to go get what you want. At the same time and in the same breath, like you have to understand that you have to be patient through the process day in and day out, and like nothing is going to come easy.
Absolutely. And, talking about that, hearing your story about your dad and God bless that he's okay and that he's made that recovery to where he is today. I mean, that also shows you, and it goes back to like having a strong family support system, and to see your dad go through that and to overcome it and be so resilient. I mean, and to be hardworking at it and to see him that he had to provide and he had to do those things for you guys. I mean, that teaches you a bunch of skills in itself because you watch someone that you're close to, that's your parent, go through those things, and you're taking that and you're applying it to what you're doing now. I mean, that is incredible. That seriously, it's incredible, and that's the power of impacting people. Like
Mhm.
that is it right there. That's
Yeah,
how you
dude. Yeah, one of the big reasons why I wanted to get into this field is because of the support I had growing up. Like watching my dad go through that just to support us, like with whatever it was that we needed, because he went through that. Like that's what allowed me to play sports. With the teachers that I had, the counselors I had, the coaches I had, like all impacted my life because they wanted what was best for the players that they were coaching, or the teachers that were working with us. And so that was just something I wanted to be and kind of give back because of the support I had growing up. So
Absolutely. And like for me, I saw it with growing up with both of my parents and the way my mom's heart, you know, she has such a big heart. So I see how she impacts people, and so does my dad. But my dad taught me very much about hard work, discipline, how to be resilient, how to have tough skin, how to think for yourself, how to be very creative. He taught me a lot of valuable lessons, and so did my mom, and my stepdad. In the professional sense in professional baseball. But I learned so much from each person in my family on both sides. And I take that and I put it on, put my coat on, and I take that with me every single day. And that's another reason why I want to be so successful and working so hard in this space, is because I see how everybody in that sense have impacted people. And I want to do that too, my own way. But I just want to impact as many people as I can. And so I feel like we've aligned very closely with that kind of value. But going into values and being patient, tell me about getting into professional baseball, how you did it, and what advice you would give to someone trying to get into it.
yeah, be patient. Yeah, dude. No, getting into baseball is really hard. First and foremost, like my process through it, since I was finishing up my last semester through my grad school, like I was applying to work in professional baseball. I was networking, connecting with guys that were already in the field. Um, Realized that wasn't going to come quick. Went and worked with the military. It was maybe a 3-year process where I was applying to get into it, to work into baseball as a mental performance coach. So over the span of those 3 years, I probably interviewed with 6 or 7 teams, maybe a little more, but it's a process. It takes time. Like it's extensive. When I went through the interview with the Blue Jays, like we had something like 12 or 13 interviews, so not knowing if I was going to get hired or not, like you're putting in all this work, not knowing if you're going to get the job at the end of the day. Right. But that's what it's about. Like it's about the process. It's about equipping yourself to be a good professional in this field. Like it's equipping yourself with knowing the right people. And it one of the biggest aspects that I believe that really benefited me along the way, like through that process, was getting to know myself, getting to know how I am, who I am as a practitioner, how can I relate these skills and work with professional athletes in that professional setting. And so because I knew, deep down to my core who I was, and again, this is my take, like I feel like that really allowed me to be my best self, like to be able to bring my authentic self day in and day out on a daily basis, because professional baseball is a grind. And if you can't show up every single day, be the best version of yourself, shit gets really hard, not just for you, but for the people around you. So
And that's when that you need to have that unity as a group, and communication's big. And I love that, walking us through how you got into professional baseball and how it's a process, and how you have to be a little bit patient, but also, that it has to be the right fit, and I think in this space and mental performance and the jobs that are out there, that really is most of them,
yeah.
being the right fit. You might have all the qualifications, and you might crush the interview process, and you think you deserve it, and you might not be the right fit,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
can't take it personally. So, like, what's your advice on people going through that?
Yeah. I agree with that. And I, appreciate you bringing that up. Like, not every team you want to work for, or, take a step back. Excuse me. Yeah, not every team you interview with will you be the fit for what they're looking for. Like, everyone has different needs. There are some orgs that have one mental performance coach, like one coordinator that covers the entire affiliate, and they're looking for somebody that has already been in the field in professional sports for a few years because they understand how professional baseball operates and what they need of you, right? So if you're a young practitioner coming out of grad school, like that's a tough role to fill, to be able to cover 3 or 4 different affiliates, you know, um, and not being able to manage the thresholds or the challenges that come in a season for professional baseball. Like,
No, so I loved what you said about just finding being the right fit, not giving up, too, and not taking it personally, and that's really important in this field on how to go forward. My last question for you is, if you could look back now to the first day when you got that Blue Jays job and you showed up to the field, what skill would you tell yourself was vital to be successful for this year if you could go back?
yeah, I would say, going back to just being your authentic self, like letting people know you're there because you care about their development. What better way to do that than to get to know the guys that you're around? You're not going to make an impact on anybody if you don't, um, if you're not showing up on a daily basis. It's very easy to be a mental performance coach in professional baseball and stay in an office and wait for one-on-one sessions to come around. But if you're out on the field shagging balls, like being around the guys, they know you're there for a reason, because you care. So just showing up, being out on the field, being around the guys while they're going through, their grind of what a season looks like show up. So
Absolutely. Well, I'm really excited that I got to have you on the first episode of the Get In Here podcast, Juan. Thank you for impacting not just me today, but everyone that will be listening to this. I believe you're one of the best mental performance coaches in the game. Love being around you. Love, picking your brain. Love learning from you, and you're a great friend as well. So I really appreciate you, taking the time to do this and to not just impact everyone that will be listening to this, to really make your footprint on this mental performance space through this podcast as well. So I really appreciate that. And to my listeners and people tuning in to the Get In Here podcast, can't wait to see you guys next time for episode 2.